A good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Erev Shabbos, Parshas Vayikra. Erev Shabbos, Parshas Zachor. It's a very special, very wonderful, amazing Shabbos. So let's see if we can find some connection between Parshas Vayikra and Parshas Zachor. So we know that in Parshas Vayikra we talk about the sacrifices, and amongst the sacrifices we talk about a Shalom, a peace offering. And our rabbis tell us that why is it called a peace offering? Because Sheyeshlam Shalom Mizbeach LeKahanim UleBaalim. Because it brings Shalom between us and God, and it also brings Shalom to the Mizbeach, to the Kohanim, and to us, which means that the Kohanim get a portion of it, we get a portion of it, and the Mizbeach gets a portion of it. What does it mean though? That because everybody's eating from the same pot, all of a sudden that brings Shalom? That's what makes Shalom, because God gets some, we get some, and the Kohanim get some? What exactly does it mean? Why this more than any other korban? Why does this bring Shalom more than any other korban? Many korbanos have that same feature, that we get something, the Kohanim get something, God gets something. Why is this called a Shalom? Why specifically here does it say we say that it brings peace? Let's go to the different part of Shabbos. Let's go to Parshas Zachor. Let's talk about Amalek. Because we know that Amalek, the Torah describes it, Asher Karcha B'derech, they happened to meet us in the road. The happened to meet us was not the way we saw things. The happened to meet us was the way they saw things. They saw everything as being coincidence. They didn't see the hand of God. And therefore, they described it as Asher Karcha B'derech, that they happened to see us on the road. But there's another explanation of Asher Karcha. And Asher Karcha means, from the word kar, cold, that they really cooled off everything. That we were burning people. Nobody wanted to touch us. We were like a fire, like a divine fire. And nobody wanted to start up with the Jews. And what they did by starting up with us was show that we're really not so much on fire, and they cooled us off. But in the meantime, by cooling us off, they burnt themselves. They destroyed themselves. Why would they do that? Why would they destroy themselves in order to be able to destroy us? That which is called self-destructive behavior. Why would they get engaged in self-destructive behavior? What was important enough for them to destroy the Jewish nation, or to harm, or to cool down the Jewish nation, take away some of that fire of the Jewish nation? Why was that important enough to them? And in the meantime, to destroy themselves and to sacrifice themselves. Okay, so to understand this, we have to understand also that we're told that Kiyad al Kes Ka, that we talk about the war between Amalek and the Jewish people, and that God's hand is on his throne, or the hand was on the throne. So we understand that Kes is referring to Kisei, and Ka is half of God's name. So our rabbis tell us that God's name is not complete as long as Amalek is in the world. That Amalek made war with God, in essence, that Amalek's presence in this world makes it that it's not called Kisei Hashem, it's called Kes Ka. That we only have really part of God. In other words, that we can only relate to a part of God. What does that mean? That God is not complete until if there's Amalek in the world. Because I think that to understand all this, we need to understand something very fundamental and very important. What is Shalom? So we know that the word Shalom means Shalem. It means whole. But the truth is that the word Shalom, we say, is one of the names of God, because it really is a description of the very essence of the existence of God. And that when there is Shalom, that in itself is an indication of the presence of Hashem. You know, our natural state as people is that there is a certain jealousy and a certain sense of competition that exists between us. Because in a natural state, I see you as really taking up my space, and that I can't have fully what I want because you're here in this world. Because your existence is really taking up some of my existence. And the reason for that is because ultimately I see my world and your world as two separate things. My reality and your reality are not the same. They might come together every once in a while, but they're not the same. And therefore, when you're encroaching on my reality, when you're encroaching on my space, when you're trying to live in my world and to take my things and to take things that should be coming to me, so then that makes me uncomfortable with you. Shalom only happens when we recognize that we're each a chelik elikam mal, that we have one source, that you and I are from exactly the same place, and that you and I are made from the same thing, We are made up of the same material, and ultimately we are connected to the same reality. And that your world is my world, and my world is yours. Shalom Bias, and the reason why Shalom Bias is so critical to us is because it's the greatest testimony to God's existence. Because the fact that you and I can bind ourselves together and to live together, and to not see each other as competition, and to not see each other as taking away the other's space, that means at the end of the day, we recognize that we really are one because we come from the same source. And that's why Shalom Bias has to be guarded and protected almost at any price. That's why we can change things because of Shalom Bias. We're allowed to do certain things to ensure that there's Shalom Bias, because that is the greatest testimony to God's presence. You want to see God in a marriage? Look for Shalom. Look for real peace. The peace of existence and of coexistence, and of recognition that your existence is as critical and as important as mine. Shalom, peace, is really the greatest kavod shemayim, is the greatest honor that we can give to Hashem. Look what happens by Korban Shelamim. You want to know it's called a Shelamim? Because the Kohen worries, that doesn't worry about his portion. Kohen worries about what the Jews are going to get, what the Yisrael is going to get, the owners of the Korban, and that God is going to get something. God's not worried about what he's going to get. God's worried about what the Kohanim are going to get and what the Yisrael is going to get. The Yisrael is not worried about his portion. He's worried about what the Kohen's going to get and ultimately what God's going to get. Everybody's worried about somebody else and to make sure that somebody else is going to eat, which means that I'm giving reality to something that is outside of me, because I recognize that we're all part of one entity. The Kohen is not worried about the existence of the Kohen. The Kohen is worried about the existence of the Yisrael, because the Kohen understands that he and the Yisrael are one. The Yisrael is not worried about the Yisrael. He's worried about the Kohen, because he realizes that the Yisrael and the Kohen are one. That's what Shalom is. That's why this korban is called a Korban Shelamim. This is exactly what Amalek was opposed to. Amalek was opposed to that connection, to that oneness that Klal Yisrael had achieved. And that what Amalek believes is that by separating, that's when you win your independence. That when I stand alone and apart from you, when I separate from you, so then that gives me my own reality, and that gives me my sense of independence. And therefore, self-destructive behavior is really a desire for disconnection. It's really a desire to stand alone and to be independent, which is not, not our way. It's not God's way. It's not the way of Shalom. The way of Shalom is that I can't exist without you, because I am you. And we are one together. Amalek was a contradiction to Shalom. Zachor Amalek. That's why we have to wipe out and obliterate the name of Amalek, because we can't be a part of that. We can't have that sense of independence which comes from separation, that we can't have. Al tifrosh min hatzibur. Don't separate from the tzibur, because you are the tzibur. In order for us to have shalom, we have to recognize that we are shalom. We're one whole. We all come from exactly the same place. And therefore, only when we wipe away Amalek, only with mechias Amalek, can we then achieve shalom? Can we then achieve peace? Everybody always talks about Amalek in the sense that Amalek is not just merely a nation. Amalek is an ideology, and it's an ideology that's crept inside of us and that exists in us also. We have parts of us that all we want is to attach with other people because we recognize they are in our competition. We recognize that they really are one with us, but there's still a part of us that really feels that everybody is a competition to us and that we're not separated. And I really don't want to be a part of every person. And I want to be connected to every person. I'm not trying to figure out a way to be connected. Some people I'm happy not to be so connected. That's the Amalek part of us. We have to wipe out any vestige, any trace of Amalek. That has to be obliterated. That has to be taken out. That has to be destroyed. And maybe that's connection between the Parshas Vayikra and Mechias Amalek and Parshas Zachor. Is inside of Parshas Vayikra we have the formula for peace. In Parshas Zachor we have the formula for disconnection. And we have the mandate. Machai Timcha, Zachor Amalek. Get rid of that desire for disconnection. Understand that you're all made of a portion of Elikah Mimal, and then you'll be able to achieve real Shalom, which is the essence of Purim. And without going into too much detail right now, just look at the mitzvahs of Purim, Matanos Lavyonim, Mishloach Manos, hearing Megillah in a group, in a tzibur, joining together for Purim Suda. It's all about realizing that other people are not my competition. We live in the same space. We live in the same reality. We share the same air. We share the same creator. We are one. And that's what we need to achieve on Purim. That's what we need to achieve in our lives. Because when we do, like we achieved Geula through that, redemption through that in the time of Purim, it's that will give us the ultimate redemption, the Geula Shlema, which should come speedily and quickly in our days. Amen. Everybody should have a beautiful, amazing, awesome Shabbos, a beautiful, amazing, awesome Purim, a Purim that is celebrated not to celebrate, but celebrating Shalom, that's used to create a oneness with other people. And a Purim that's celebrated with an eye towards that oneness achieving an incredible Geula, an incredible redemption for the Jewish people. Have a beautiful Shabbos.